right now, I'd just like to welcome to the stage MATÍAS Piñeiro.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks again for all this. I'm very happy to be able to be here presenting the film, and it's very a nice opportunity to show everything together. As Brad said, it's my second film, and I was a little bit worried about that. I remember that after my first feature, I started to have ideas for the second one, and I thought that it was important to do it quickly, to not take a lot of time in order to do it. And at the same time, I felt that I had to keep on working some stuff. But you know that you watch your film many times here and there, and then at least myself, I'm like eager to keep on working certain things that I think or I thought that could be better. So I wanted to keep on shooting and to have a more athletic relationship with film, not just like take 5 years to make a film, and especially because back then, I felt that there was like a kind of a second feature syndrome, that films didn't relate to each other, that you could see like a very interesting first feature by someone, and then suddenly something happened in the middle that made like a second feature something that you couldn't recognize, and I didn't like that experience. And in many cases that I won't say, but that I could watch while I was studying or before I started doing films, I'd say what's happening that the films are so different and for bad, not different for good. And it happened with friends of mine. I say it's weird that very intelligent people, very sensitive people, something happening in the second feature. And one thing that I thought it was this idea of like too long a time went by between one and the other. And then if I started thinking more, too much of a way of making films, of the system, of thinking that if you did one little film, the next one should be bigger. And that kind of an idea, it's something that I realized that I didn't share, and I think that it hurt films, or at least for the films that I had in my mind in that moment. So I wanted to do a film fast. I thought that would be interesting to do. Fortunately, I was fortunate enough. So I had nobody to help me, of course. But fortunately, The Stolen Man, my first film, got like it only did 4 festivals, but it won in 2. So that was super lucky. I was very lucky. But it was like a whole year of nothing, of saying, okay, nobody cares, nobody wants to see the film. I did something that nobody... And suddenly, very rationally, I get like an award at Korea. And you know, it's Sarmiento, and everybody's like afraid of Sarmiento because it's so national. Suddenly, the jury, no one was even Latin American, and they could relate to it. So that was something that I appreciated, and that helped me. That money, it helped me to give some money back to the people that work in the previous film, and to put the money up for the next one. And I also think like the production system, and this film is all shot in one single location, and that produced some limitations that I thought that they were good in order to think how to open up the film. I wanted to make also a more complex film. I wanted to be more complex, more baroque. Then like my third film, I wanted to be simpler, but the second film I wanted to be more complex. And I was reading a Mexican writer that's called Mario Bellatin, and also William Shakespeare as companion readers during the writing process. And that's when I started like thinking about Shakespeare and so on. And the place that I shot the film is the place where I spent my summer holidays, the house of my aunt and my uncle, while I was like 3 years old till 8. So it was kind of weird to go back to that place, especially because it got absolutely vandalized during when we stopped going there, and it got vandalized. So when you see that it's all like turned down, it's not like the production designer that did it, but actual people, like an actual gang. So well, Sarmiento is here again, but this time I took his voyages to Europe, Africa, and America, and I just take these materials in order to produce another kind of a narrative. There are inspirations, they're kickstarters in a way. They're not. It helped me to produce a new kind of fiction. I will be back for Q&A. I hope that you enjoy the rhythm, that you don't get overwhelmed. Sometimes it can be a little bit distant and sometimes not. I think it's a film that has to do with rhythm and letting yourself go into that rhythm and so on. So I will be back after the film and we'll talk. Thanks.
Please welcome back Matias Piñeiro.
Thanks.
I'd like to start by asking a question about something you mentioned in the intro about the rhythm of your film, and talk about that maybe in relation to the plots, which are often very maybe complicated, whereas the rhythm is often very seductive and draws you into maybe how you balance those two elements.
Yeah. Well, as I said, when I was writing the film, I thought that I wanted to make a film more complex than the previous one. In that, and I meant like more fragmentary in a way, like more like blocks. Each scene would be like a block, like a kind of a chapter, and it's organized that way. And that there will be like some gaps in between each thing. And I thought that an idea would be that it will be attractive to see the scenes, and even though you don't have the whole information, the willingness of wanting to know will keep you watching. And I knew that that idea wouldn't work in a very long film, that it should be like a short and condensed film that has this idea of always leaving some gap in order to be completed. That would make you keep on watching in a way, and in the middle and during each scene, I could work out the scene like very deeply, or with all this movement and all this cropping and all this framing and with these different levels and so on. So that's the idea that I got from the rhythm of it, like this dependence and independence of the whole picture. You know, how much do you have of the whole picture? Not much. But still, it's like a little bit of a puzzle that keeps adding a piece each time.
Okay, and then maybe something about I guess two of the characters at least are seem to be descendants of historical figures. It's Sarmiento and then Rosas. Maybe you could talk a bit more about that, and maybe help maybe the audience a bit in case they don't know Sarmiento or Rosas.
I like to, from one film to the other one, to produce certain variations. And in the previous one, it was a girl that was somehow fascinated by reading Sarmiento and took up some things and so on. And in this one, I thought that it would be nice if I go right at it and inside a tale. Like they're not like distant to it, but they feel that they can be inside of it. So I really thought, well, these people exist in a way. I know that the film is not realistic. It has another kind of a tone. And I thought, let's think what these, the great-grand, I don't know exactly how the word is, but the great-great-great-granddaughters of these people are doing now, and I'm sure that they will be together, because as they were obsessed with each other, Rosas and Sarmiento in a way, I'm sure that that's still there. It's kind of a fictitious idea, of course. It's not very serious, but it helped me to produce a fiction. And so I was attracted to this idea of the family tree that Sarmiento was also very attracted to, and develop the plot in a way that in the end the film doesn't take that idea that seriously, because when in that game scene or sort of a game scene, you see that when they do the biological tree, there's one that doesn't have testicles, so like the family tradition stops in a way, but it's kind of a playful way of putting it up, and I'd like the idea that she's kind of. She has like Elena has a little bit of an epic delirium, maybe. No, it's much more about fiction and the construction of fiction rather than historical facts. I think. But historical facts can help me know that, can help me to produce a fiction around it and have certain things in common, others not, produce a rhythm, produce enjoyment or not. I don't, and I'm more, I pay more attention to those aspects in a way. Or I also pay attention to those aspects. Both things.
Okay, and I'd like to open up to the audience now. I think we have a couple of volunteers, so if you raise your hand and we'll pass the microphone. We have one here and then another one. There's a microphone right behind you.
It's coming.
Yep. Well, considering you wanted to do a fast film, you chose an extremely complicated and highly layered film to construct, which is rather mad in a way. I mean, you'd think if you're doing a fast film, you'd do a simple something. But I wonder if you could comment on the term you used, baroque.
Yeah.
Because it seems that it's coming into fine art, and people are starting to talk about wanting baroque and wanting layered and complexity again.
Yeah. Well, I'm not taking it like very... I think this idea of, multiple layers in a way, and the idea of detail also, like the emphasizing the detail and overdoing it maybe, that you're much more fascinated by a little gesture than the reality, than the realism of it maybe. And especially the idea of many layers and the idea of density that layers build. And I was trying to think that it's not something that I was, how do I do a baroque? It's not that I start doing that, but it's something that intrigues me and had something to do with the rhythm, with producing something that moves and keeps on moving. I'm always like curious about how to produce volume in film, for instance. How do you produce volume in film? And I'm not talking about 3D, but I'm talking about something that can, like, how do you appropriate space in film? How do you portray space? And that's why I'm curious about the layers, the actual space layers, when you have like a pathway and you do this, you do that, someone comes in, someone comes out, and you're focusing on those aspects also. It's not that you don't think about plot, because for me there's a plot, and I had like all these cards where I drew every character, and I drew like, for instance, I remember making like a pyramid. What was it? It was the pyramid of power and the pyramid of love. I had two pyramids, and so there's someone that is in the top and someone that is in the middle, and you have stages, and each character was in each different space, and that was something that for me was important. It's not that there's not a quiz now that you have to fill in what, but it helped me to work out the structure of the film. So this idea of layers and is like present in many aspects also, even in the sound, in a way. So you're having many perspectives coming into like along, and that will produce a certain effect that the film may want to achieve. Those were the ideas. There are impressions also, an impression of what Baroque can be. It's not that I have a degree in which I could, but...
Okay, I think there was someone back here before. Oh, if you could just wait for the mic for a second.
My question is this: you have a fascination with the past, it seems to me, and I was wondering, are your characters living out the unlived past of the ancestors? And so I'm wondering, okay, but then they were also acting, they were living.
Yeah.
And in their living, were they living the unlived past? Like, had they not escaped the past of the ancestors?
Yeah, I get it. I think that maybe these characters, or at least Elena, much more than the other ones, that each character has a different relationship to this, to history in a way. No, Isabel, you could say that she's there for other reasons that maybe not explained, but you see that she's not that compelled with the whole plot in a way. Yeah, like taking history and like family tradition as a burden, as something that you have in your back and you must do something and you have certain responsibility and you are obsessed with. So in that way, they're living. they're living through a tale. Like I'm here. I'm talking much more about Elena. No, that she's following this book in a way, these writings, and that's why I say that she's like an epic. She has like an epic delirium. Delirium is also a tale. It's a story that has relationships with a certain perception of reality. No, and I think that these characters that are all in an enclosed space, they are developing their narratives. No, they take themselves a little bit like fiction characters in a way. So in that sense, there's a void because they're dealing themselves like outside of a certain reality. So I do think that there's this idea that they're acting, or Elena is acting, following a tradition, that she feels that she has this kind of, there's another word that it's not exactly tradition, like destiny. And maybe there's an idea of emptiness in that, of filling up those gaps. But I don't know, I should think it more maybe. I don't know if I answered the question, but the question was open too. So my answer is open. But I think, yeah, that there's something there.
I have another question actually about the location. You talked about the practical idea of why you went to this location, whereas your first film was set in Buenos Aires, and then now you're out to the country. Can you talk maybe about thematically why you chose to go to the country?
Because as I wanted to do a film that was more complex, I needed to be able to be much more free to operate. So I had many difficulties shooting in many places, and that you can do this, you can do that, there's so many limitations. I needed a place that it would be like a studio, like back in the studio system, that if I need to tear a wall, I almost could do it. And that I could be more free. And then was the idea of how do I make a film that doesn't feel that it's so enclosed and you repeat places? How do you open up a film that it's only shot in one place? And that would be like a challenge for me as a filmmaker to shoot it here, shoot it there. There was a moment where I felt that I couldn't go back to certain rooms because there was not a good angle. There was not something new because I already did it in another scene and so on. But it was a very practical thing that had to do with having a liberty of staying like if I needed a whole weekend to stay there and see how I could frame traveling in a living room through a window with some fire on the other side and so on, I could do it. I could stay, I could work and stay and think and organize it. So if I was shooting like in the museum in Buenos Aires in the Stolen Manor, I didn't have that time. I didn't have that opportunity. And I was curious about being able to have that chance of not worrying about other people's business, limitations, impositions, and so on. It was like shooting in a studio.
And right up here.
Could you talk a little bit about your aesthetics? Because we have the grains. Yesterday was the film that black and white.
Yeah.
And now it's color.
Yeah.
What's your intention with?
I tried to think very objectively in a way, in a very literal way, what options I have to do a film now. No, so I keep on working and trying to make out the best of the possibilities that I have. That may be very narrow, but at least there's some, and I could do something with that. So that would be like a basic thing, to deal with what you have. And that really shapes your craft. And then I always like that the films relate to each other. Not that I stress myself to put like wings but for instance, if I did a film in black and white because I didn't have money to do a film in color in film because I never worked in film, so I wanted to work in film, so black and white was the option, and I did The Stolen Man. After doing that, I'd say, okay, let's try. I did this thing in black and white. I never did this in color, so let's do it in color, and so on. And there's like a communication between the films, even in that very dry aspect. But I think that it's important. What does color bring? What can I do with color? and so on. Like in yesterday's film, Maria, the main character, runs all the time. So I'd say, okay, in this film, it will be nice to have her like paralyzed, for instance. That's the way that I like that the films communicate. It doesn't have to be showy. It doesn't have to. It's not that you have to know it, but it will compose the film, and yeah, and it gives peculiarity and detail to each thing. It's not that it's just absolutely arbitrary. It's just in a system of relationships that it's within me, but also a little bit out of me. It's in the films, no, and try to treat the films as objects that you can see from afar and decide also how it moves, how this is. Something that I really like, that I think that I'm a little bit obsessed, is this idea of movement, of rhythm, of volume. This thing of like thinking about film as Calder could think about his objects. No, this idea of you put a little bit of weight here, you put a little bit there, then wing comes and makes it move. And here it's the same. I put like a static shot here, and then after that, I put a very talky scene. In one scene, I put something that will be more like music, and then in the next one, I should balance that. And I really think, and that produces, I think, a rhythm that helps narrative, or at least my idea of narrative. So I like this idea, and I think that this is the thing about volume, not static, not there's great filmmakers that do static films or that do like two-dimensional films, or like plain films, like chatos. Okay, like yeah, like
static shots.
No, when something is like they big mile, that there is no like profundidad. Yeah, like something plat, quelque chose plat, flat there, like, and I like generating the opposite in a way. And then I really think that I treat the viewer as myself, and I try not. I think that there are smart people or people that I have next to me, and that I'm not treating them as someone that cannot follow, or that would be intimidated, or that I think that audiences are intelligent and they are sensitive, and that can follow something that I will be elaborating. I can miss sometime. I can be successful at others. I don't know, and that's why I keep on working, and I keep on like polishing my craft and the craft of all the people that are in the film too, also, because I tend to work with the same people over and over. So it's many things. I don't think that you have only that I have an aesthetic or something. It's just multiple, again, decisions that you took, but also many that you're taken to take somehow.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time right now, but I hope you'll join us tomorrow night, and you'll see more of this evolution in the way he deals with the text of Shakespeare. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.